Speaking of she, we're talking about Kellyanne Conway. I think that if I'm ever going to have creeping moments of sympathy for anyone, it may be Kellyanne Conway.
You're a lunatic. What's the matter with you?
I mean,
seriously.
I think, honestly, like you can look at Kellyanne Conway. She is, she's on Matt Lauer today. And I really think, I think that, I would be curious as to what the odds are that Donald Trump doesn't make it through his term, just in terms of has a sheer exhaustion, has some type of medical thing. But I feel like Kellyanne Conway will continue to do what she's doing until it kills her. Like, she strikes me as someone who would be just sort of like, I don't know what but like that she's like almost like a robot.
So you're saying you sympathize with her because she is such a relentless sociopath that she will lie, obfuscate, torture all of us until she literally physically drops. And this is the person that evokes your sympathy?
Well, I think there's something about that compulsion and the total dedication to it that I think, like, there's a quality of it that's like, when,
like you talking about Social Security.
No, you know what it was that I saw the other night? It was Z, that the zombie movie.
Okay, yeah.
And at one point in it, Brad Pitt discovers that what he needs to do is to, I guess I gotta not spoil it. We can never talk about movies anymore? The thing came out 5 years ago.
That's a useless movie. If Z's a spoiler problem for you, get out of here.
So at one point, he injects himself with a fatal disease.
Yes.
And, just to try this thing out. And it's like that type of moment every time I see Kellyanne Conway, that she's just like, she's on a suicide mission. And it's just like a slower one.
She's blowing past like boundaries of self-preservation and stuff like that.
Yes, exactly. Like she just doesn't see them. Here she is this morning she's up with Matt Lauer. Matt Lauer, for God's sakes, right? If you can't go on Matt Lauer's show and think you're going to get a pass, where can you go?
And incidentally, by the way, we're always kind of pointing out the various contributors to this catastrophe.
Email.
Matt Lauer, when he had Hillary and Trump on, that was unbelievable.
All right, well, here is Kellyanne Conway.
And he made that decision.
So had he not resigned, the president would continue with him as national security advisor, even though he misled the vice president and the administration about the contents of that call?
That fact is what became unsustainable, actually. I think misleading the vice president really was the key here. And I spoke with the president this morning. He asked me to speak on his behalf and to reiterate that Mike Flynn had resigned. He decided that the situation had become unsustainable for him here, and of course the president accepted that resignation.
You're saying that was the straw that broke the camel's back, but the White House knew about that last month when the Justice Department warned the White House that Mr. Flynn or General Flynn had not been completely honest in characterizing that conversation with the Russian ambassador, and they even went further to say that as a result of that dishonesty, he was at risk for blackmailing by the Russians.
Well, that's one characterization, but the fact is that General Flynn continued in that position and was in the presidential daily briefings, was part of the leader calls as recently as yesterday, was there for the Prime Minister's visit from Canada yesterday. And as time wore on, obviously the situation had become unsustainable.
Kellyanne,
General Flynn...
That makes no sense. Last month, the Justice Department warned the White House that General Flynn had misled them, and that as a result, he was vulnerable to blackmail. And at that moment, he still had the complete trust of the president?
Matt, I'm telling you what the president has said, which is that he's accepted General Flynn's resignation, and he wishes him well, and that we're moving on. There are at least 3 candidates, very strong candidates, that would be considered for a permanent position here.
Okay. Now, first of all, is it me or is her mascara like...
It's a mess.
Her mascara is
having
like,
a hard time.
And she's contradicted herself not only is she contradicting, in the context of what she's saying, that fact became unsustainable. But wait a second. That fact became unsustainable. That fact became unsustainable for whom? If General Flynn was the one who decided to resign, because that's what they're sort of arguing, right? That General Flynn wanted to resign. It became unsustainable for him? That fact? He'd been living with that fact since just as he started to supposedly lie to Mike Pence, and then for the past weeks. But that fact became unsustainable for the White House. All right.
But this is her. It's just with less. She looks, honestly, she looks like she ran into Mindy.
Well,
and Mindy talked to her. She just looks exhausted.
Yes.
That's all.
That's what I'm saying. And she then, Kellyanne Conway, hot off of the Matt Lauer interview, I believe it was. Which one came first? Was it the Matt Lauer was first? I don't know. I don't know which one was first or which was second. But she's better in this one with George Stephanopolous, but also just as she seems to have gained some composure, or something happened in between those two things. Maybe she had coffee if it was later, or maybe she got hit by a bus if it was before. But here is Kellyanne Conway with George Stephanopolous trying to square the circle. Why did General Flynn decide now to resign when A, it's supposedly his own decision, B, the facts haven't changed. He lied to Mike Pence supposedly a month and a half ago. C, the White House has known that he lied to Mike Pence as of at least 3 or 4 weeks ago. So what's changed? Well, when in doubt, just restate the question over and over again.
And we are back with Kellyanne Conway, the president's counselor. Kellyanne, thank you for joining us this morning. Of course, the big story today, General Michael Flynn. So the White House was told by the Justice Department last month that Flynn was vulnerable to Russian blackmail, yet he stayed in the job for, 17 days after the warning from the Justice Department. Why?
George, the General Flynn continued on the national security team and kept doing the presidential briefings, being on the leader calls. We are aware of the Justice Department opinion, but the fact is that not until yesterday, General Flynn continued in his job, and it became increasingly unsustainable for him.
I understand that, but that's my question. The question is why. The White House counsel was told by Sally Yates of the Justice Department that the General Flynn was vulnerable to Russian blackmail. Did the White House counsel tell President Trump that?
I don't know the answer to that, and President Trump has asked me to join you today to say that he accepted the resignation of General Flynn, and really the key here in that resignation is very simple. It's that the Vice President, Mike Pence, was misled by General Flynn, or General Flynn could not completely recall what his conversations had been
with the
Russian ambassador.
But Kellyanne, the White House knew that almost 3 weeks ago. They knew that after the Justice Department told the White House counsel, Don McGahn, almost 3 weeks ago that General Flynn had not told the truth about those phone calls and was vulnerable to Russian blackmail.
Well, these are what are in printed reports, but the fact is that I can't reveal what the White House knew or didn't know and who in the White House knew or didn't know. All I can tell you is that General Flynn, as a national security advisor to the president, continued in that role, and the president also wants me to refer everyone to the comments of Charles Krauthammer last night on a different network, wherein he makes the point that it's not this contact or this incident necessarily, it's the misleading of the vice president or the incomplete information. It's either it's being dishonest or forgetful.
Well,
I'd like to say that General Flynn had a 30-plus year honorable career in the military. He's one of the chief intelligence officers, key intelligence officers of a generation. And we're sorry for this situation, but the president accepted his resignation. He's moving on.
But I understand what you're saying there, Kellyanne, but this is exactly the point. 3 weeks ago, the Justice Department told the White House that General Flynn was misleading the vice president was misleading the public about his contacts with the Russians. You had that information. The White House had that information, chose to keep General Flynn in his job, chose not to correct the record, chose not to tell the public what they knew about General Flynn's phone calls. How could that be?
But George, again, I'm not here to say who knew what when, because first of all, that would be divulging information that is highly sensitive, and secondly, I don't know all the details. I haven't spoken to everyone that you're talking about in that instance. It's a very fluid situation. It was obviously very fluid into the night. We were here very late last night.
Yeah. Now, here's also what's interesting. She both implies that this information, that's what the printed information says. But if she's in any way questioning that, then when did they find out at the White House that Flynn had lied? Was it a complete surprise? Well, no, because she said it was unsustainable over time. So when did she find out? Like, as brutal as these interviews look, they're not giving her half of the cross-examination she should get. I mean, listen, you can't have it both ways. At what point did you find out? And why did it become unsustainable? Like, what changed? It was just as the president went on and on, he realized, Fredo,
Michael,
how could you do this to me?
I loved you. You break my heart, Michael. You break my heart. No, actually, I could see that though. I think what's funny is that there is actually inadvertent truth in it, which is like, I thought we were going to be able to get away with you lying, but it doesn't look like we are. So you got to go.
Well,
like, I actually think that is the truth.
That
like,
is
it did become unsustainable.
That is the truth. The facts became unsustainable when they were publicly reported. And we thought, and this is exactly why Donald Trump's first response to all of this. It was in the form of a tweet, 9:30 a.m. This is exactly why this was Donald Trump's first reaction. It was not that he lied. It was that the fact that he lied became unsustainable. Yeah, I'm sorry. I sent it to you. It was his first tweet from 9:30 this morning. And it was, I'll read it. The real story here is, why are there so many illegal leaks coming out of Washington? So in other words, this became unsustainable for Donald Trump because the intelligence community leaked the fact that, A, Michael Flynn talked about the sanctions, and B, the White House was informed that he had talked about the sanctions. So it became clear that Mike Pence was either lied to or was lying to the American public.
Every aspect.
And that is what that is why Donald Trump, in Donald Trump's mind, this story is about the leaks. It's, why can't I maintain the lie that I have tried to maintain?
Guys, this isn't going to work if lies are exposed. I mean, I come from a business background, and kind of important, there's actually a lot of things that people still don't know about me.
I'm trying to make money here.
I'm trying to enrich myself. If people know that, then it doesn't work. I don't get what you're... Every part of this administration really is just turning into some sort of like dumb version of Nixon. Like, wouldn't that be like the thing that Nixon would say something like, it would be much more Machiavellian, but it would be like, it's not the act, it's the cover-up, or something like that. And now we have like on Twitter, it's not the crime, it's the leak.
It's the
right, like
telling about
it's
it.
The telling, and then we've got like from Kissinger to Gorka, like we just have like
And the funny
Yeah.
part about that, put up that other tweet. The funny part about the second half of that tweet is, the first half is he says, the real story here is why is there so many illegal leaks coming out of Washington? But the second half is, will these leaks be happening as I deal on North Korea, etc.? Of course, the last time he dealt on North Korea, it was in front of an entirely filled room at
Wrong.
Mar-a-Lago.
Wrong.
As people are having their chicken Kiev, or
I
whatever
can
it is.
explain that to you. That was a legal leak. So you just don't know what you're talking about. More alternative facts, lying media, fake news.
Here's a picture you can take with the nuclear football.
Hey, could someone get the nuclear football guy? By the way, people say I don't like black people. Look at the nuclear football guy. Black guy. Great guy.
And then, of course,
Everyone says I don't like black people, but the nuclear football. Now, would I let the nuclear football guy get an apartment in one of my buildings? Of course not. But he does a great job, and he has the football. And by the way, the Clintons promised that people could press the button. Okay? That's going to be the next dumb love story. Oh, believe me, Hillary was going to press the button on any country of your choice, depending on your pay to play. So don't tell me that Donald Trump's any worse. Obama did it. ICE, deportations, worse. More deportations of anyone in human history.
Hey, it's Sam Seder. Why don't you subscribe to this channel? You can do so right over here. Subscribe.